As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. As long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming, when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Having said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. "Go," he told him, "wash in the pool of Siloam." This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, "Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg?" Some claimed that he was. Others said, "No, he only looks like him." But he himself insisted, "I am the man." "How then were your eyes open?" they demanded. He replied, "The man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash, so I went and washed, and then I could see." "Where is this man?" they asked him. "I don't know," he said. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. Therefore the Pharisees who asked him how he had received his sight. "He put mud on my eyes," the man replied, "and I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others asked, "How can a sinner do such miraculous signs?" So they were divided. Finally, they turned again to the blind man. "What have you to say about him? It was your eyes he opened." The man replied, "He is a prophet." The Jews still did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. "Is this your son?" they asked. "Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that now he can see?" "We know he is our son," the parents answered, "and we know he was born blind. But how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for already the Jews had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Christ would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." A second time they summoned the man who had been blind. "Give glory to God," they said. "We know this man is a sinner." He replied, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." And then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered, "I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." The man answered, "Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly man who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who is he, sir?" the man asked. "Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said, "You have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you." Then the man said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshiped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind." Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, "What? Are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin, but now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains." And may the Lord add his blessing to our understanding of these words.
Well, good morning, Bethany Christian Church. Ooh, y'all feel that? That was a spicy one. Thank you, Elaine. I appreciate you reading that. It's 41 verses. You got a whole chapter in today. Can we give Lane a round of applause? You know, I guess whoever made the reading list for the lectionary for Lent decided for the liturgist, that's the word I was looking for, decided for the liturgist that they were going to be suffering servants throughout Lent. So thank you, Elaine. 41 verses, well done. It was beautiful. So friends, you might remember last week we met the woman at the well, one of my favorite stories in the Bible. And we met the woman at the well, and we talked about how, like Nicodemus, she was someone who was, what? In hiding, right? She was someone who was in hiding. And while Nicodemus came at night, she came during the middle of the day because she didn't want to deal with all the drama that would have unfolded had she gone to the well in the morning with everybody else. She was hiding. But like Nicodemus, or unlike Nicodemus, she clearly understood something that he didn't. Nicodemus, because he was a religious teacher, he was what we might call a Pharisee, very well-educated guy, came to Jesus and started asking a lot of questions of intellect, of the mind. He said, well, clearly you know something I don't. And while that was absolutely true, what the woman intuitively understood a little bit better than Nicodemus is that matters of faith are not matters of the mind. They're not matters of any intellectual assent you could make. They're actually matters of your heart. Life is about the heart and not the mind. Life is about this deep human longing that each and every one of us at some point in our life are going to feel. If you haven't felt it yet, you will. It might be on your deathbed, but you're going to feel this deep human longing. And many of us in this room probably have experienced that deep human longing for something that truly satisfies. Not something that, you get from one goalpost to the next, but something that is always kind of floating in the background, and you're not really sure that you're ever going to scratch that itch. It's always there. And so what does Jesus do when she recognized in her own life that she has this need that cannot be satisfied by water or by any of the men she's been with or by getting her reputation back on track? He offers her what? Living water. Living water. Jesus meets her and offers living water. And so today, as we've been talking about over the past couple weeks, we're not going into thirst again today, but we're shifting back to sight. John's gospel is full of images about light and about seeing things clearly. And then lo and behold, we get to chapter 9, and what happens? A miracle of healing a man born blind. The man in today's story begins in darkness. His whole life up to this point is in darkness. But what unfolds is not only the healing of his eyes, but the gradual courage to speak honestly. To speak honestly about what he has experienced. Because once someone begins to see clearly, once you and I begin to see clearly, the next challenge is learning to tell the truth about what we see. Let us pray. God of light and truth, we gather today as people who, whether we realize it or not, people who are still learning to see. Some of us come with clear vision and others with questions, and many of us, probably most of us, are somewhere in between. But God, the beauty of that is the fact that you meet us where we are, just as you met this man. Just as you met the man born blind and opened his eyes, we ask that you would open our hearts today. Help us to see what is real. What's real about ourselves, what's real about our lives, and what is real about your presence in and among us. God, give us the humility to recognize what we do not yet understand, and the courage to receive that clarity that you freely reveal. Lord, may your Spirit guide us into deeper sight and deeper honesty. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So what happens after we begin to see? What happens? Well, I love that I never knew that there were 40 feet on here and that there's Anna taught me something today. I had no idea what that banner meant. It looked nice, but I didn't realize we were actually tracking our Sundays there. We've been tracing a path, if you will, right? And that was on my notes today, but Anna already explained it to me. We've been tracing a path, right? We've been tracing a path over these past few weeks of Lent. And we've talked from the wilderness, Jesus entering the wilderness to be tempted by these voices that we too in our lives are tempted by from time to time, that voice of the appetites, that voice of power, that voice of spectacle. We recognize those voices that shape us. The purpose of Lent in a lot of ways, if we're mapping clearly our experience to Jesus' experience in the wilderness, is to recognize those voices that shape us, to know the difference, hopefully, between the ones that are the bad, the good, the great, and most of all, what's God's voice saying? And sometimes it's a little confusing when we have this cacophony of voices in our lives, when we have all the noise, the static going on. And so we take this season as a pause, as a moment to reflect, as a moment to get into the wilderness, to get to where, yes, there's danger, yes, there's temptation, but also there's quiet, where we can recognize, oh, that's a good thing, but it's not a God. That's a great thing, but it's not a God thing. That's a bad thing. That's clearly not a God thing. And then we moved 2 weeks ago to Nicodemus. We learned that in these vignettes of Nicodemus's life throughout the Gospel of John, that his awakening is something that happens quietly. It begins in the dark. All the noise is quiet. Nicodemus goes to Jesus at night. And this awakening begins quietly as our vision changes. And then with the Samaritan woman this past week, we faced the deeper thirsts that live beneath our daily lives. There's a thirst that cannot be quenched by anything you chase in this life, except for the love of God. And today the question shifts again. What happens after someone begins to see clearly? We've been talking about clear sight over the past couple of weeks. What happens after we've begun to see clearly? Clarity creates a second challenge. A second challenge we see in the text today, and that's speaking honestly. Speaking honestly about what we've seen. The story begins with a familiar question. If you know anything about ancient Judaism, the religion of the Hebrew people that developed up into the 1st century, if you've read the book of Job, you know that if something bad happens to somebody, well, clearly somebody sinned. It might be you, it might be your mom, your dad, and this is their understanding. It's a question of what we call in theological language theodicy. Theodicy. It's a question of why do bad things happen to good people? You may have asked this question in your own life. Maybe you have this view, you look in the mirror, I'm a good person. But stuff hits the fan sometimes, to me. Or maybe you know somebody in your life you really admire. Could be a family member, could be a friend you've encountered in this life, and you're just like, I don't understand. It seems like the universe must be against them. I think about what we were talking about this past Friday. I absolutely adored Raz. But you know what? She went through strokes. She went through all kinds of crazy health crises, and yet she was still standing for years. She didn't let any of that stuff stop her. But as far as I could tell, Raz was a good person. I only knew her a couple years, but I really loved spending time with her. She's a good person. And yet, I know through stories told to me and watching her body decline in these past couple of years, bad things happened to her. This is a question of theodicy. And so we see the man born blind. And the first question that Jesus' disciples, of all people, should not be asking this question. Jesus' disciples say what? Who sinned? Who screwed up to make him blind? Because clearly he's getting what he deserves because somebody back in his family lineage messed up. That's how they viewed things. That's how they viewed things. Who sinned, this man or his parents? Well, clearly it's kind of a little early for him to sin because he wasn't even out the womb yet. He was already going to be born blind, right? The disciples assume suffering must have a cause that somebody can be blamed for. They can point their finger at somebody. And Jesus, as you've heard, read to you today, completely denies that as a operating framework. He says, no, you guys are missing the whole point here. He actually does something I really like. I'm gonna read it to you again here. Jesus says, neither this man nor his parents sinned. But this happened, check this next part out, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. Oh, this is so cool, because this is coming from textbook Soren Kierkegaard right here. This is textbook. In my favorite book I've ever read in my entire life, it's called Fear and Trembling. Soren Kierkegaard talks about this crazy concept called the teleological suspension of the ethical. That's not going to be on the test, I promise. But the teleological suspension of the ethical, say it 10 times fast, you'll have some fun, is this idea that things happen in our lives or things happen to people or God ordains a moment where he literally suspends ethics, what we believe is moral, what is good, in order to accomplish a purpose. And so Jesus is literally explaining, no, guys, you don't understand. This has nothing to do with who sinned, who we're pointing a finger at. This has everything to do with the telos today. This has everything to do with the point. What is going to happen? What is the purpose of this interaction I'm going to have with this man? He wasn't born blind because he did anything wrong. Maybe he was born blind just because. But you know what's great? Something beautiful is going to come out of this today. Jesus is saying, this happens so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. Jesus redirects the conversation away from guilt and toward possibility. Toward possibility. The problem is not a cosmic punishment. There wasn't any difference between Jesus, the Christ, and God the Father. What does Jesus say all across the Gospel of John? My Father and I are what? One. My Father and I are one. Why would a house be divided against itself? It can't stand. You might remember Jesus saying that. You might remember Abraham Lincoln borrowing it later. A house divided against itself cannot stand. God the Father and Jesus the Christ are one. And so when he encounters this man, he says, no, you missed the point. Your religion is wrong. This man was born blind, yes, but you know what's great? Today, this interaction, we're going to be talking about it 2,000 years later. The problem isn't a cosmic punishment. It's actually an opportunity for revelation, and it's beautiful. I love that this whole chapter takes the Nicodemus story and it shrinks it down to 41 verses. The whole thing, the revelation occurs over probably what? I mean, he goes in maybe 2-3 days. I don't have a clear timeline here. They didn't give us one. But maybe 2-3 days, this man goes from blind begging on the street to a disciple of Jesus Christ. Incredible. So what happens? Well, spoiler alert, Jesus heals him. Jesus heals him. And sight is given. Jesus heals the man who was born blind. And the act itself is important. This is usually the thing, like when Jesus does a miracle, we're all like, oh, wow, look at the power displayed. The crowds do it too. You'll read it in the gospel. The act itself is important, but the gospel writer John and Jesus are less interested in the miracle, and they're more interested in what happens after the miracle, right? They're way more interested in what happens after the miracle. A miracle's great, but again, we're not talking about seeing clearly so much as we are talking about, it's not what's up here, it's what's about the heart, right? It's not about, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, me standing outside that door right there, staring at the brick wall and seeing that one spot on the wall real clearly. It's to be born from above and maybe get a bird's eye view at Bethany Christian Church. I'll give you a better idea of what the square footage is, remember? The act itself is important, but John isn't so much interested in the miracle than what follows the miracle. Because the real drama, as you just heard read to you, starts after the healing. What happens? What happens? Let's take a look again. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Let's take a look at verse 8. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, "Wasn't this the same man who used to sit and beg?" Some claimed that he was. Others said, "No, he just looks like him." Verse 10. They look to him and they say, well, how then were your eyes opened? They demanded. Love that. They demanded. He replied, "The man they call Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam, sent, and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see." Where's that guy at? Where is this man? I don't know. He just did what he was told. He's like, I don't know. But it begins with the people, right? You see in the next heading on the text there that he goes and talks to the Pharisees. And there's this whole huge debate. Again, we don't know the timeline. It's probably going on for a day or two, maybe 3. But he goes from all the people that, probably walked by him not caring about his existence. And then they just, well, yeah, he's the guy who begs. But why is he walking around? Why can he see now? That doesn't make sense. He goes to Siloam, he washes, and now there's the big debate erupts, and everybody's like, what the heck is going on here? This guy could see. He looks like him. No, that's not him. And then the next day he goes to the Pharisees, and it's this whole drama, right? Guy's healed, and a big drama erupts. Seeing clearly changes how people relate to you. This guy can see clearly, and people are denying that he's the same person. You look like the guy, but is it you? Maybe for you, you've gone through a season in your life where, yeah, you made a big change. And people are like, oh, I didn't even recognize you. You had a new haircut. Or maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe it wasn't the haircut. Maybe you started acting differently, and people are like, what's going on here? You're not the same person I was friends with. You're not my same kid. You're not my fill in the blank. Seeing clearly, this change that comes over us when we meet Jesus changes how people relate to us. And sometimes, like the text reveals to us, it unsettles them. It unsettles them. And then if you take a look at the next part of this, the Pharisees start investigating the healing. I like that heading that the folks put in there. They start investigating. And the Pharisees are like, clearly this isn't the same guy. I mean, they pulled in the parents. It's a whole to-do. It's a big fiasco, right? It unsettles the people that knew him, and then it unsettles the Pharisees themselves, because what happened? Jesus healed when? On the Sabbath. Well, come on, a guy sent from God wouldn't do that. It unsettles the systems that they've set up. Just like Nicodemus was unsettled. He said, I know all this knowledge in my head, and yet somebody who has been sent from God, clearly I'm divided in my own body. My heart's telling me one thing and my head's telling me another. I got to go straight to the horse's mouth and understand who this guy Jesus is. And so the Pharisees encounter the healed man, and they say, well, this breaks my whole religious system. This doesn't make sense. God wouldn't do that. Not my God. But yet, Jesus helps this man to see. The Greek word to see here, I love this, is blepo. Blepo. To see, to perceive. I love that this word is carried out throughout John's gospel as meaning, it's got an implication that is way deeper than simply looking around and seeing things. It's a deeper sight. It doesn't mean a physical sight. It actually means a recognition. A recognition. My friend Isaac and I, he's the theologian I talk about every once in a while, have been talking a lot about recognition. And you notice my grammar whizzes and what is it? Not phonics, but anyway, like prefixes and suffixes, we all know what those are. A prefix is the little couple letters that come before a word sometimes, and a suffix comes after the word. But the prefix here in recognition, to recognize, is what? R-E. What does R-E mean? Again. Yeah. It's to repeat, right? It's again. And so recognition, blepo, what John is trying to indicate to us is that the sight that this man receives is not new sight. He's actually receiving sight again. But wait, Pastor, how does that make sense? Because he was born blind. Can anybody tell me? He was born blind. He was born blind. He sees something, and he understands what it means. His perception is changed. He receives physical sight, but we all know that the story here is revealing something a lot deeper. His perception begins to grow. I think I just heard somebody whisper like a spiritual awakening. Came from over here. Right. But again, R-E means what? Again. So he actually comes to know God in a deeper way. He comes to know God again because he's always known God. You've always known God. Revelation, for some odd reason in the culture of Christianity over these past 2,000 years, we got mixed up. We thought that revelation meant to reveal something that's never been revealed. But no, it has the prefix R-E. It's to come to the knowledge, to come to the sight, to see something again. Again. And so what happens? There's an interrogation, right? He begins to see, and he gets interrogated by his friends. And then he gets interrogated by the religious authorities. And clarity disrupts their expectations, like we talked about. The religious authorities begin to question the man, not because they doubt the miracle happened. Clearly, everybody's all in agreement here. Something went down. Something went down. This guy can see again. They don't doubt that the miracle happened, but they have issues with what's going on because the miracle disrupted their system. They had an understanding of how this was all supposed to work, how faith worked. And yet something new happened. Something new happened. I feel like we get in the habit of that sometimes. My Christianity, my authority, sometimes we say it's God, but the way we actually act it out, it's like, no, my reading of the Bible is the authority here. We don't have the humility to say, well, sometimes the person next to me has something they're reading differently. And maybe if I was humble enough to admit that I don't know everything, I might actually hear the truth. And so these guys, they see this miracle disrupt their system. Their, not Christianity, but their Judaism. If the man was blind and now sees something new is happening, it doesn't fit in the box that I put God in. And the systems that depend on certainty, another way to put it, those systems that insist on certainty, that insist on I understand the truth already, actually resist revelation. They resist the encounter with God. Notice the difference in responses. The authorities debate. The neighbors, a little bit more humble because they're not religious professionals, like a miracle happened. I don't know how that works. The authorities debate and the neighbors, what do? Kind of speculate. Is this the guy? They ask questions. I'm confused. Like there was no town hall where this guy got healed in front of everybody. So they're seeing this man that they've known probably for years and mostly ignored. And now he can see. He was sinned. He was a sinner. He was cursed. We didn't pay attention to him, and now he's walking around with sight. He's been literally touched by the hand of God. And then the authorities, I love this, the authorities go to his parents and they say, "What is this actually your son? Because this does not fit my system. It doesn't make sense. He was healed on the Sabbath. Is this really your son? He's not a figment of my imagination, is he? Have you ever had an experience in life where you're like, is this really real? Is this happening right now? It almost feels like you just got bounced out of your body. You ever seen, what's that Marvel movie? Oh, Lord. Doctor Strange. Anybody see Doctor Strange? And the lady comes up to him and she does I don't know what she's doing, her kung fu, and bounces him out of his body. It's kind of feels that way, right? You're watching yourself. Is this really real right now? The parents hesitate. They probably don't even think this is real right now. Their son, she gave birth to the kid, watching him all his life. Unfortunately, they abandoned him. He was on the street. No, that's him. That's my beggar son. The authorities debate, the neighbors speculate, parents hesitate. Turn into a Baptist preacher real quick. Get those good rhymes. But the man who was healed, what does he? He does something very simple. He tells the truth. Thank you. He tells the truth. The man's testimony is a simple honesty. To keep it brief, the man says what? I was blind, and now I see. That's the one thing I do know. The one thing I do know. Notice he doesn't get in a theological debate. He doesn't pretend oh, I've been healed, now I'm the expert. No. He doesn't get into a debate. He doesn't teach them some new doctrine. He doesn't say, well, this is how the temple in Jerusalem needs to change now. The Pharisees need to think. No, he doesn't say any of that. He just gives an honest testimony. He says, the one thing I do know is I was blind, and now I can see. He doesn't claim to completely understand things. He just speaks what's true. And since we've been talking about leadership over the course of Lent, to be able to say what's true, that's one of the most honest and important parts of being a leader. To say it how it is, even if it hurts. Let's take a look at another Greek word here. We've got anablepo. Oh, there's more to the blepo. Anablepo. Well, we have another prefix going on here. Can you guess what it is? Ana. There's an ana before the blepo this time. Well, it means to look up, to regain sight, or to see again. This ana means upward or again, and so the healing is not just a restoration. He was born blind. He got new sight. No, this anablepo is more than just a regaining of sight. That ana, that upward or againness, I'm going to hang on to the upward because we've been working with that image. It's a lifting of his vision. Yes, he is given new eyes. I wish I could read that sign back there without my glasses on, but I can't. He was given new vision physically, but he was given vision from above that he was talking about with Nicodemus. Being born from above, to be able to see from above. It's a lifting of his vision. It's a movement toward a clearer horizon, if you will. This reinforces the deeper theme that we've been tracking throughout our Sundays. This idea that a revelation of God lifts your perspective. You don't get really good at looking at that wall outside the door. You see the whole thing for what it is. Let's talk about the irony of the story. I love this story. It's one of my favorites because it flips expectations. Flips expectations. The man who was born blind begins to see clearly. The leaders who assume that they see clearly, the religious people, today's churchgoers maybe, the people who already think they have it all together and understand what they need to understand, they assume they see clearly, end up being the ones who become more blind. Jesus says it. You assume you see clearly. I'm going to elaborate a little bit here, not his actual words, but you assume you see clearly, but it's actually your certainty that has blinded you. It's your certainty that has blinded you. The leaders who assume they see clearly become more entrenched in blindness. And Jesus names this irony, right? He says, I came so that those who do not see may see, and those who think they see may become blind. That's how he closes this out. And he doesn't say that as a condemnation. I don't think Jesus is ever in the business of condemning those that he debates. It is a very common thing if Jesus was in the class of people called Pharisee, and he would debate other Pharisees, and this is a normal thing that went down. And so he goes and he has this debate with them. He says, I've come so that those who don't see are going to receive their sight. And by virtue of me being me, Jesus being who he is, some people are going to be blinded by the light. I love this image of light. You ever walk out early in the morning? George knows this. Sometimes you can actually appreciate the sun rising, and sometimes you can't. It's too bright. And this light that Jesus is talking about, this light image that John's gospel constantly refers to, is something that is clarifying. The light reveals, but it also blinds some of us. It also blinds some of us. Some of us, we actually find it harder to see because of the light. Like, when it snowed the other day, these past couple months, you go outside and that light reflecting off the snow, good Lord. It's dangerous to drive in that. It's crazy. But the light can't be anything but the light. Jesus is the light. And sometimes that reveals to us, and sometimes some of us are blocking our eyes. Jesus says, I came so that those who do not see may see, and those who think they may see become blind. This isn't a condemnation, it's an exposure. He's revealing the truth even when it's hard. We learn that clarity reveals the difference between honest searching and what the Pharisees in this case were doing, is a defensive certainty. I mean, you read in the text just here a minute ago that even the Pharisees were divided. I wonder if Nicodemus was there. I wonder if he was saying, well, maybe he's doing a new thing. Maybe God's doing a new thing. And his compatriots, his colleagues were like, Nicodemus, what are you talking about? And back to our man who was healed. I want to speak to the courage of his honesty, to the courage of his words. We've all noticed that the man's story evolves as the chapter unfolds, right? And first he calls Jesus a man. Well, a man healed me. And later he calls him a prophet. Well, clearly, not just any ordinary man is going to do this sort of thing. Maybe he's a prophet. And then he meets up with Jesus again. And he finally recognizes that there's something deeper going on. His clarity grows through the act of speaking honestly. And I love that we talked about earlier. I feel like this is Nicodemus' story. And we see Nicodemus in a couple of different vignettes throughout the Gospel of John, but we see this man's story in one chapter. And over the course of maybe 2-3 days, he goes from literally blind to seeing the most clearly he's ever going to see. This is the pattern we've been tracking throughout Lent. Nicodemus, he started with questions. The woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, tells her town what she has encountered. And now this man who's been healed, he just tells the truth. He doesn't open up a debate. He doesn't say, well, I think I understand everything. No, he just says, here's what happened to me. That's the most honest testimony we could ever have, is not to speculate about the why or the what or the who or the how or the what, whatever. It's to say, no, God was there, and I was there. God was there, and I was there. We learn that awakening leads to honest words. So why is this man such a role model? Why are we talking about him today? Why is he a leader? Well, we notice that leadership here is not power. Power comes to him, to ask him questions, to debate, to tell him why getting healed on the Sabbath was wrong. No, leadership here is, it's not certainty. He doesn't come to them with certainty. He didn't even know who the guy is who healed him. He told him, hey, go walk away. Which also, like, that's just a weird image to me. Jesus puts some mud on his eyes and he says, hey, man, go find the pool, the scent pool. See you later. Go wash your eyes off. I hope somebody, like, grabbed him by the arm and was like, come with me. I hope Jesus was like, hey, disciple B, go over with him and get the job done. But, like, it's just a funny image to me. I'm sorry. Back on topic. Leadership is not power here. Leadership from this man is not certainty here. It's not institutional authority. He has no institutional authority. The institutional authority encounters him. Confused. No, leadership here looks like this. It tells the truth about what we have seen. It resists the pressure to pretend we know more than we do. And it remains honest, even when all the systems and the people and the speculation and the debate pushes back. The healed man is the clearest voice in this entire story. He says, God was there, and I was there. This is what happened to me. He doesn't ever distort what happened. He refuses to. He just tells the truth. So how do we practice honest seeing? We've been talking about how Lent invites us to see clearly, to hear the voices clearly that speak into our lives. But it also continues by inviting us into deeper honesty. So if you're taking notes, here's a couple of questions for reflection this week. Where have your eyes been opened recently? Where have your eyes been opened recently? What truths have become clear in your life? What truths have become clearer in your life? And I don't mean like the truths that feel good. I mean the truth. Sometimes it's good to hear the truth, and sometimes it hurts a little bit. But what truths have become clear in your life? And last, where are you tempted to hide that clarity? Because it might disrupt expectations. Where are you tempted to hide that clarity? Because it's going to disrupt expectations. It might disrupt yours. It might disrupt somebody else's that you love. But are you going to risk that rejection, that potential rejection, to tell the truth in love? Seeing clearly is a gift. It truly is. I believe that sincerely. But speaking honestly about what we see, it's not a gift, it's an act of courage. Telling the truth is oftentimes incredibly inconvenient and very hard. Speaking honestly about what we see is an act of courage. And so with that clarity and courage, with the man who once sat in darkness, the story ends with him standing in light. Not because he mastered theology, not because he had the best argument for the debate, but because he told the truth. He remained honest and he refused to add anything to the story. I was blind, and now I see. Sometimes the most faithful words we share are the very simplest words we share. And sometimes the clearest vision begins when we are willing to say exactly what we have seen. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for the ways you continue to open our eyes, not all at once and not without challenge, but steadily and faithfully. As we continue through this Lenten season, help us welcome the clarity that comes into our lives, even when it unsettles us or asks us to see things differently than we have ever seen them before. God, give us courage to speak honestly about what we've seen. Give us humility to remain open to what we are still learning. May our lives reflect the light that you reveal, and may our words be shaped by the truth. We ask this in the name of our teacher and our friend, Jesus Christ. Amen.